Welcome to another edition of Dianne Andrews in Black and White, an open discussion about the issues you don't want to talk about and the arts you need to know. Now, here's your host, Dianne Andrews.
Thank you. My name is Dianne Andrews, and I'm your host of Dianne Andrews in Black and White. I want to thank you all for viewing us today. I want to thank my YouTube audience, and I want to thank the audience sitting here with us today. We really appreciate the response we've gotten, which shows me that I'm doing the kinds of things that you need to know. In Black and White, there are always shades of gray, and that's what we want to talk about, to show you the black of an issue and the white of an issue, and you make the decision on what that shade of gray may be. In doing the show today, I'm doing Walking While Black Part 2. And I have some of the same people with me that are part of this solution series we're trying to do. But in Walking While Black 1, after that we did a domestic violence show that I would like for you to go on YouTube to see if you ever think you've been domestically violated. And a computer hacking, because later this month we'll be doing identity theft, and computer hacking leads to that. They're both out there on YouTube now. So thank you, and let's get started. Hi, Chief Naps. Thank you for being back with me today on Part 2. As you all may remember, Chief Naps is the legislative committee leader and head of all the police chiefs in the state of Louisiana. He is also the police chief of Baker here in Louisiana. We have Silky Slim. Yeah, I know everybody said I knew Silky, but I didn't know Silky, but I know Silky now, and he's a great guy. Silky's an ex-con, but he's an activist now. He's got his son here with him today, who's going to be an electrical engineer. Silky's a great guy, and he's raising his son, which is a great tribute to him. And we'll talk more about some things that Silky said. He said one thing in my show: I will beg before I starve, but I will steal before I will beg before I steal, but I will steal before I starve. And he also has coined something called civil war in the black community. And when you think about what Silky says, it's very profound, because that's true. We do have a civil war going on, and we have to stop the violence, which is his key phrase. To my right is Attorney Preston Castile. Preston comes to us from two places. He's an attorney at Taylor Porter. He is also the national president of the Southern University Alumni Federation. And we're going to be talking about some of the things in Ferguson today, so this is an apropos time to talk about those things with Attorney Castile. To his right, we have Chico Yancey. Chico comes to us as the Louisiana president of CURE, which C-U-R-E, which is a criminal organization to reduce criminals by working in the criminal justice system. He also is a mentoring director for the Capital Area Reentry Coalition, because he is also a convict who re-entered into society. And he was a trustee, and he had a conduct of an A+ rating. He spent 20 years in jail, and we'll talk about what happened to him down in Bourbon Street about 31 years ago, because I think you've been out 11 years, right, Chico? All right, let's get started. And what we're going to do first is look at a video on Ferguson from a talk show. We're going to only look at this for about a minute, and then I'm going to ask Attorney Preston Castile. I'm going to ask Preston some questions on this.
Last night, Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson broke his extended silence when details of his testimony before the grand jury were finally leaked, and there was a common thread throughout. It was how he was of Michael Brown. So here are some of the examples of that. These are not all of the examples, just a select few. Darren Wilson described feeling small when he gripped Brown's arm to try to stop the blows. When I grabbed him, the only way I can describe it is I felt like a 5-year-old holding on to Hulk Hogan. I grabbed him, by the way. Let's just be clear about that. After that first shot went off, those are his words. After that first shot went off, Wilson testified that Brown stepped back and looked up at me and had the most intense, aggressive face. The only way I can describe it, it looked like a demon. That's how angry he looked.
Oh, I already hit. A demon's not a real thing.
Demon's not
real. After that first shot went off, which I believe hit Michael Brown in the hand, right?
We don't know. It was a grazing wound, apparently, at very close range.
So maybe he looked like a guy who'd just been shot.
Yeah. He testified that after briefly chasing Brown and his friend, again, chasing, Brown turned around to look at him and made like a grunting, aggravated sound before running at him.
Grunting, aggravated sound, again, the sound of...
as we see, this video took a different slant than George Stephanopoulos and ABC. They really think that there should have been an indictment of Darren Wilson. They think there was a preponderance of evidence to go to trial instead of Darren Wilson being able to testify 4 hours without a cross-examination. There are a couple of questions I'm going to ask you, Preston, and then you can answer them. I read somewhere that because this was not an impaneled jury, it was not a trial by jury, that he could, if some new evidence comes before the prosecutor there, can he retry him, or is this still considered a double jeopardy?
Yeah, under this circumstance, it would not be double jeopardy. And in fact, if there were something incredible that came out later, he could be tried. This was not a final jury verdict. It was a grand jury non-indictment. On the other hand, after 70 hours of testimony, as long as this grand jury was impaneled and heard all of the evidence that it heard, it is very unlikely that he would be tried again. And it's very rare that that happens. I would be surprised that anything that could come up would come up that would cause him to be indicted and tried again.
But what you don't, do you believe, or as the system says, there was not enough preponderance, I think is the word, of evidence to take it straight to trial by jury?
And it's really not a preponderance standard. And in the law, you have different standards. In terms of a grand jury, what they're looking for is probable cause, which in fact is a lower standard than preponderance. In civil cases, you have preponderance, and just a little bit more likely than not that what is said to have happened, happened. But here, probable cause is actually a lower standard. For him to have been convicted, he would have had to have been convicted by a much higher standard beyond a reasonable doubt. But here, it's just probable cause, and the grand jury needed to know whether there was probable cause that in this particular case, Darren Wilson truly and reasonably feared for his life and safety when he fired those shots that killed Michael Brown. So in this particular case, it was only probable cause that needed to be proven, but there was a lot out there for the jury to take into consideration, the grand jury.
What do you think, Chief Naps? Darren Wilson is not a small guy. Darren Wilson is 6'2", and as we know, Michael Brown was much taller and weighed about 300, but Darren Wilson weighs about 220, I understand, and he's a tall guy. Do you believe that Michael Brown, well, tell me what you explained from what you know or think happened in the car, when Darren Wilson, the police officer, first came and talked to the two guys?
Very first thing I see that happened was a total disrespect for authority. You have a police officer just trying to talk to this young man to see what's going on. They have a scuffle inside of the police car. Compliance is a very important thing. Compliance will eliminate a lot of problems.
When you say inside, was Michael Brown inside the car?
There.
Or was he, from what the evidence showed?
The evidence say they were in the car.
That's what I thought I read, in the car.
The evidence says that he was getting out of the car. The scuffle started right there. And the shot, the first bullet ended up inside the car. It hit his hand, I believe.
Yeah, Michael Brown's hand, didn't it?
I haven't totally studied this case because I tell you, like I said on the first show, I reserve my major opinions till after the trial or whatever they come to. I will say
well, the grand jury said a non-indictment, so I think it's pretty much finished as far as legal.
Let me tell you what happens in there.
From legal, unless there's a civil suit.
I've had 2 of those in the last 2 years in the city of Baker. 2 of our homicides that we charged people with, we booked them on second-degree murder. They both were justified homicides in the grand jury and no bill, so those guys didn't go to trial. But we didn't have that evidence at the exact time that we did it. But what was heard, as the attorney has told us, they find out that what is actually true to the knowledge of what the witnesses saw and the evidence they can gather. But in the deal with Michael Brown and Wilson, you have a police officer here that is dealing with a gentleman that just committed a strong arm robbery.
Right.
He's also dealing with a non-compliant.
And wasn't it found that he had smoked some marijuana, I think?
He had drugs in his system.
Is that right, Sip? Did you hear that?
Yes.
That he had drugs?
They did say they were drugs in his system from the toxicology report.
I think it was marijuana.
You know, and it doesn't matter. I mean,
doesn't that usually make you a little more sedate? If he was sedate
Let me
then
tell
when he
you what
pushed that
happened.
guy out of the way.
Let's never try to calculate what an illegal narcotic will do to a person, because if you're ADHD and you
it does
take
the opposite.
this exactly, so
That's
let's
right.
not try to calculate that. That's why it's not a, you know, it's not a regulated drug right now, so to speak. So
in Louisiana,
I would say that that it was a bad situation all the way around. You know, you have two families that are totally devastated.
Right.
The Brown family and the Wilson family.
well, he just got married for the second time to a police officer.
I know
read.
he's engaged. I don't know if they got married.
Yeah,
but-
they got married.
And you know,
she's a police officer.
I hope that the Brown family can find some peace. I hope that the Wilson family can find some peace. The people don't realize when you have a homicide, you have two families that are totally destroyed for life. You've got one that's going to a funeral and one that's seeing one go to prison for the rest of their life. Two families that are totally devastated, so it goes way deep.
Right.
In the community, when we look at the Ferguson situation, I don't know that that would have been any different, the alternative, had Wilson been a black officer. I don't see that being
Have
any
you heard
different.
of this situation down at home? In fact, my next show will be with them, where a black officer killed a 14-year-old black boy,
Yes.
Cameron Tillman.
Yes, I'm very familiar with that one. But what I'm saying is the situation had nothing to do with a black violator and a white police officer. It had to do with a violator and a law enforcement officer.
But I think in people's minds, the reason the rioting and the burning, which makes no sense to burn anything down, you're hurting black businesses also. But I think in their eyes, it is a black-white issue. And let me get Silky's opinion on this, Chief.
I think it's a very unfortunate incident, and I do believe that in my mind there's a such thing as overkill, and there's also a way that you can shoot an individual where you can make that individual submit. So when I see an overkill situation, or a situation that I consider overkill, then I look at those situations and I look at the way that the grand jury has been handled.
Did you consider Ferguson overkill?
I definitely considered it overkill because he was an unarmed individual, and we can put into play the drugs, but marijuana is a drug that could have been taken 2 hours before or 24 days before, and it will still show up in your system. So it doesn't necessarily say that he was under the influence of marijuana at the time of this offense.
But we saw the video from the store where he stole the cigars, and he pushed the store clerk out of the way.
Definitely.
Like, I'm entitled
Aggressive
to these,
behavior.
which is not true.
Aggressive behavior.
Very aggressive.
The same thing that the
Illegal
chief
behavior.
said. Yeah.
Silky,
It's
we have to say.
non-compliance,
Yes,
definitely.
yeah.
But just because I come into your yard and become aggressive doesn't mean that you have to kill.
But I think if let's ask Chief about this, and I've asked several policemen, black and white. If you think your life is in danger, you are taught to shoot to kill, armed or unarmed. Is that correct, Chief?
You've
Knapp?
never, I've never been trained
someone told me that.
I've never been trained to do anything but a kill shot if I'm to pull that trigger. And that's why in my department, I've issued all of my officers tasers as a step in between there. And a lot of people don't like the tasers, but it's a great opportunity for an unarmed person, as you say, so
That's right.
not to have to be shot.
That's right.
In the history of the Baker Police Department, there's been one person shot and killed by officer, and it was a white officer that shot a black man back in the 80s. He had just stole some lawnmowers from a place. The officer stopped him, didn't know he had stolen them. He was stopping because something was dragging on the trailer to tell him. Guy got out and stabbed him, but the officer the officer weighed about 300 pounds.
I've heard Darren Wilson may or may not have known he had stolen the cigars. I've heard both ways.
This guy stabbed him and thought he had killed him. He was getting back in the truck to go, and the officer was able to get back in his car and get his rifle and shot and killed the guy who stabbed him. And that was a tragic situation for us. That guy, that officer who's retired now, he still has nightmares about that, and it's a bad situation. But the thing about we don't shoot to injure.
Yeah.
Because if you have to shoot someone, you're at that point to where, you know what, it's time to do something. Now, you will see situations and hostage situations where you have a sniper that's a controlled shot come in and shoot a gun out of somebody's hand or something, but that's not what the training teaches us. And we're not training to kill people, we're training to terminate a threat.
And you're training because you think you're taught,
Yes.
don't get yourself killed, save yourself.
It either has to be
right?
one of two things. Either I'm shooting because I'm saving someone else's life, or I feel
defending
that mine's
mine,
inferior.
defending my own life.
Yes.
What do you think of the body camera idea? Chico, what do you think of the body camera?
Well, I think, you know, from what we're seeing now in reviewing and CBS and all this with the body camera, it will take away the guess of what happened. It will give you the real evidence of whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whether it's good, whether it's
what
bad.
the policeman did was right or wrong.
What the policeman did and what the offender did.
Right.
Okay, so we may not like the results of it, but it will give you the honest truth until someone maybe cuts the camera off, you know, get in the way.
And then
Are you
sometimes
looking at body cameras in Louisiana?
Actually, my department is in the process of buying them from officers right now.
What about Baton Rouge? Do you know,
Baton
Chief?
Rouge is doing it too.
Yeah, they
Great.
do it.
That's good.
President Obama just allotted several million dollars,
75.
70-something
that.
million
Yeah,
dollars
75
as a
million.
match grant, like they did for the body vest, the
Yeah.
body armor.
Yeah.
So we'll be more people, but we don't need to become a dependent society that the only time you can get a conviction is if you have video or DNA. If we get caught up in the fact, well, you don't have it on video, so it didn't happen, a lot of
Yes.
things are going to go south on that. You
But
know?
I think, would you agree that the
would be a
good of it outweighs the
It
bad
will
part
be-
of
and
the cameras?
In the Baker Police Department, every one of our cars is outfitted with a camera. They don't always work.
Even now?
Even right now, we've been, ever since I've been the chief.
Not
that was
Baton
one-
Rouge, though, correct?
No, the Baker Police Department is one of the most highly technical police departments in the
I
country.
wonder who says that. There may be a little prejudice toward that.
Well, I can tell you why there's prejudice because of
Toward that statement, I'm
our
saying.
focus, because I'm going to tell you what happens.
No, sir, I'm making a joke about you,
I know
Chief.
that. People come in my office. I had 2 activists come in with a young lady who was totally violated by one of my police officers, a black officer and a black female. She was
When you
livid.
mean sexually violated?
No, she just felt like she was violated by, he just treated
Verbally
her terrible.
abused.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we viewed the video, she should have been baking cakes for my officer and begging for his forgiveness and apology for how obnoxious and rude she was. The 2 activists looked at her and said, "Why do you have us here?" The video corrected that. Before the video, that officer was hung out to dry. He was no good. He was rotten. He had totally done this lady wrong. But the video saved it, and 99% of the time it does. I have had incidents where the video
So
has
we all
put the
agree that
officer
the
in a
videos,
bind.
cameras, tasers would be good.
yeah.
Silky, what
I like
were you
what
saying?
Chico said. Chico made a very important point when he said that the camera is only as good as the operator that has it. In New Orleans, Louisiana, there was a young man that was shot in the head 4 months ago. The police officer cut the camera off right before she pulled him over, and it was kind of a vendetta.
Did you say she pulled him over?
Yeah, it was kind of a vendetta that was going on between the two.
Was this
So
a
she's-
white police woman? Or
I'm not sure of her
okay.
race, but I know she was a police officer. And she cut her camera off, and her partner just happened to cut his camera off at the exact same time when they pull the car over. The young man ends up being shot in the head and not reported
the
for
young man
3
was
days.
black.
And it was not reported for 3 days. Yes,
That's
he
sad.
was. And it was
Very.
not reported for 3
And
days.
nothing happened,
So there was
Silky, with this case?
this case is being looked at right now, but there was news that
Very
something
sad.
had happened, but it wasn't until the attorney came forward and said, "Hey, my client is in the hospital, shot in the head by a police officer," and they said it kind of like slipped through the cracks to inform the public that he was shot.
Slipped
So the
through the
cameras
cracks,
are
a
only as
dead
good as the
person.
operator.
And they can go on and off. And me and Silky
he
could be
thinks they
wrestling.
turned them off,
Oh
is
yeah,
what
oh yeah.
Silky's saying.
Well,
They
see,
turned them off.
we have in my department, that camera's supposed to be tested every day to make sure it's working. We turn
that
ours
what she
on
said it wasn't
on
working?
every call, whether you go.
Well, no, she
to a-
said.
But
she
we're not
said,
talking
she
about
said,
exceptions to the rule.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
talking about real rare
She
cases
said
that
actually
occur.
what happened was that they were getting ready to get off from work, and they cut their cameras off and then
As
spotted
we
him.
know, there are 8,000 to 9,000 black boys or black people killed, mostly boys, in America a year. 51 have been shot dead in Baton Rouge already this year. 91 to 93% of those are killed by other black boys. We go to Ferguson, Missouri, and we riot. We burn the city down. We burn a lot of it down based on, and I'm not saying this is right. And the judicial system has said Darren Wilson was right. So we have to go along with what they have said. But we need to be rioting, as I know you believe in, if any peaceful rioting about the killings of black on black crime. But let me say this also, white crime is also 84% white on white crime.
Oh, yeah.
Whites, it's very high too. We always, people throw out the black, but let's talk about the white. We've got a problem with crime in America. And that's a major problem. And the quickest way in America to be in violence is to be poor, uneducated, unwed mothers who are pregnant, and that's the quickest way. So how do we make an impact to get these people back into mainstream society? What do we do? I know we have the BRAVE program.
13% create 87% of the problems.
Of the crime. You're right.
But you know, the Saint player that wrote this article on his Facebook page, and I was reading it this morning, and he basically said, yeah, we may have a race problem, but what we really have is a sin problem.
That's right.
And once we get to the point of being able to reconcile and bring people together to dialogue, because I bump into Silky or the chief not knowing who they are and they turn around and shoot me, it makes no sense whatsoever. We've gotten away from when I just turned 69, so when I came up, it was fisticuffs.
Yeah.
And I think we
and
need
then
to
a
go,
hamburger after.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
let's
well, I
talk
think
about some
we did.
things.
Let's do better. My grandmother, my little cousin, and I can remember vividly, you know, you have a little fight. And they would make you go and hug and kiss.
Love.
That was the worst kiss
love,
in the world, but three hours later, you were still playing and forgot about what the
Don't
what
you
the thing
think,
was.
Chico, a lot of these young kids out here are not getting enough love and affection, and in the black society, it seems to be a big thing about respect.
Well,
respect is
I
big.
think
Respect
love,
is big,
Respect
right?
is big, definitely. And when you look at it, it's a culture of violence all the way around the board. So even when we talk about this being a sin problem, then when you look at what will take you and cleanse you from sin, it would have to be religion or belief in God. But when you have a religious system that find themselves religion gang banging against each other, oh, well, if you're not Christian, you can't make it. If you're not Muslim, you can't make it. If you're not, you know, so when you find them at odds with each other, then we have the same type of chaos, because now you don't really know where to send the individuals to get healed.
But didn't God save you?
Of course,
when he
God
talked
saved
to you
me.
in the head when the car went over the cliff?
Definitely, God saved me. And one of the things that,
you know, that's why I do what I do now. Because I committed a very
Let's talk about some solutions, Chico. Tell us about what you're doing in the mentorship program with Capillary Reentry and
over
Cure.
31 years ago, came from a very good family, worked for the clerk of court, was doing the right thing, but got involved with cocaine. Worst drug. I heard the chief say, you don't know how your body, you don't know how you react.
Was this your first time doing cocaine?
No, it wasn't my first time. I had gotten away with it, you know, and then got more involved, and I will not lie, it was not my first time. And riding down in the French Quarter looking for cheap sex. Picked up a young lady and ended up with an aggravated kidnapping, an attempt crime against nature, was given a mandatory life sentence. It was my fault. I cannot justify it. I cannot blame anybody else. I cannot
In the
deny.
first way, you have to take responsibility for your actions.
You don't take responsibility for your action.
Heal.
I think that's part of the problem today.
Yes.
No one wants to take responsibility for
That's right. It's
their
always
action.
somebody else's fault.
It's always somebody. And, you know, I spent 20 years in Angola, 7,309 days. Was very fortunate, very blessed to have an opportunity to come out.
But did you learn a lesson, or were you always this kind of person anyway, just happened to get hooked on drugs because you were a trustee, you had great conduct? Was that who you were, or did you change in prison?
I was that person before I went to prison.
Cocaine.
I came up in the era when grandmama whoop you got a whooping down the street.
Go get the switch off the tree and bring it in here.
You know, it was a log off the tree. You didn't get a switch, you know. But the thing about it is, I was a decent person and a good person from the beginning. Had a wife and a family, and went astray, like a prodigal son. Went astray, and once you come to yourself, I had no idea I was going to spend 20 years in prison.
Tell me what you found in prison. Were more people? I know it was 11 years ago, but were more people like you, or were more people just bad down to the core in prison?
It's both. You have some people in prison that's just terrible people. And there's some people that got caught up in a situation in the heat of a moment and something happened, or some people were career criminals. I mean, I've known guys that have been back 3-4 times, and my thing is, hey, you didn't get the postcard, you didn't get the T-shirt, you know, but that's why I do some of the things that I do now, because
Let's talk about that. Tell us what is out there. I know we have the BRAVE program. We're going to talk about that just for a second,
Right.
and you may be able to talk
well, the
about
BRAVE
some of that,
is
or Chief.
we're in the grant that we got, the Department of Labor, the Capital Area Reentry Coalition. There's a group there that we got a grant. We work with the BRAVE initiative in the 70805, 70807. And what we
Now
do,
tell us exactly what BRAVE is.
BRAVE is the police officers that the Baton Rouge
Area.
Baton Rouge area violence elimination.
elimination, and that's what they're really trying to do. When I came up in St. Louis, Missouri,
Aren't you in CURE? Doesn't CURE do some of the same
yes,
things that
here
BRAVE
we
does?
do
But it's not
advocacy
policemen,
work.
right?
We work with state representatives, Department of Corrections, and we're trying to.
But
you
it's
know,
not policemen, it's normal
It's
civilians.
normal people to educate people. See, if people get educated about what's really going on, most folks don't get involved, and I'm sure that Preston can adhere to this and everybody else. They don't get involved until it happens to someone they care about.
Close to them, yes.
Then when they get involved, they realize, wow, the criminal justice system is not what I thought it was. And boy, for the grace of God, anybody in here, there go I. You know, you could get caught up in a moment and be hooked up in something, but again, I have to take responsibility for that. So CURE, Louisiana Citizens United for the Rehabilitation of Errants. That's what we do. We go in, work with legislatures, Department of Correction. What can we do better
Tell me real
to
quick,
help
where
these
can
people
people
when they
find
come
out
up?
information about CURE? Let's get
You
that to
just
the
go on
public.
the website, www.louisianacure.org, and you can find out all the information you want to find out, or you can call me at area code 225-270.
And I know you still go back and preach at Gangola with
Oh
the
yeah, and I still go back
yeah.
into prison, and people say, why would you go back to prison after spending so long? Well, I'm gonna
Because
tell
you're
you
trying
right
to help
quick,
people.
right quick.
Yeah.
You make promises
Let me
to
get
God.
back to the Chief.
Okay,
1 second,
okay.
Chico. Would anybody real quickly like to give some words? Because we want to continue this.
I
We
want to
brought-
encourage our community to grow together. I've grown in Baker since it was 85% white, now it's 85% black. It's the same community, people loving each other. We have to love one another.
Right. Even when I interviewed Scott Devier on the bullying, and that's what they do exactly, the #1 school, show people love first. What do you think about that, Silky?
Well, you have to show love, but I always tell people one of the biggest things that helped me right now is that you have to believe in God, but believe in thyself also.
That's right.
Once you start believing in yourself, then you can accomplish anything.
Do you think a lot of these young boys really, they show this tough image, but down inside they don't believe in themselves?
I think they believe in themselves too much, and that's why they're
okay.
showing the tough image. They want you to know who they are. So many people think these individuals don't feel good about themselves. Sometimes you feel too good about yourself and don't know how to channel that energy.
How would you think, what should we be working on to help channel that with these programs, BRAVE, CURE? I hear a lot of names, but
A lot of people say
impact
a
are
lot
we
of people
making?
say a lot of things, and there's no easy way around this. So many people say it starts at home,
Right.
which it actually does. But if the
Thanks, Silky, but I've got to cut you off. It's such a great conversation, and I know these are the conversations that are needed out here, but we need to do more than just conversations. We need to get out and join some of these organizations. Like Silky said, every little bit helps. We've got the BRAVE with the police force. We've got the CURES. We've got the Capital Area Reentry Coalition. I don't know if they take volunteers or what they do, but Chico gave you the address to reach them. So anybody that wants to be reached, you can reach them. And I ask you, let's go out, let's volunteer. Let's not wait on the government. We can't. We have to start now to stop the violence in our community and all over America. God.